Vince, I've got a point for you.
I'm ready.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready for rapid fire. Let's go.
Here we go. Fill in the blank. Former Notre Dame safety Kennedy Urlacher transferring to Southern Cal is blank.
It is not surprising. I guess I'll just keep it that way. It's not surprising. I think for the next cycle or two, you're going to see a lot of jump in the portal end up at USC because of the Chad Bowden effect. You know what I mean? Just because look, and I get it. He recruited a lot of those guys. He was like a lead recruiter on a lot of those guys. They're going to go someplace where they feel comfortable. You think Chad Bowden's not going to make those guys feel comfortable, right? And I don't want this to sound like this is an anti Kennedy Urlacher comment, because I love the fact that he was on the team. I think he's a really, really good special teams player. Yeah. I think he could have been a good safety at some point, but he was probably 5th or 6th on the depth chart overall at safety. And USC is plucking our 5th or 6th safety to go to their team.
He'll probably be
that sounds about right.
Number 2 or number 3.
Yeah,
for them.
So USC going to get our scraps.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like, to your point about Bowden, like, it definitely feels like the timing of this, like the fact that Erlocker went into the portal as early as he did, with still a couple of practices left in the spring, and the fact that he committed just a couple days, basically, 3 days maybe, after going into the portal, and he went straight to USC. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But Bowden he's got as you said, he played a huge part in recruiting guys like Kennedy Urlacher and most of these guys, or a good chunk of the guys on the roster. So he's got a good feel for what Notre Dame's roster looks like, and I'm sure there was no tampering going on.
No, Vince. Come on,
like
Sean.
The fact that he might be in his ear, and it's like, hey, you have a lot more opportunity out here if you jump in the portal. If things aren't working out for you, and I've seen some people saying, well, why would Kennedy Urlacher go? He was playing last year. He got playing time. Well, the bulk of it was on special teams.
Correct.
And obviously,
mop-up time.
Yeah, he doesn't just want to be a special teams player. He wants to be out there playing his actual position. And he just, like, the emergence of Tay Johnson, to me, felt like
didn't help.
Was just like...
and Don, or Blair.
Jadon Blair.
Blair, sorry. Him coming in, and it just, there's a lot of talent at safety. I mean, let's be honest. Let's call it how it is.
Like, where that position has come in just a couple of years is pretty astonishing, really, when 100%. You sit back and look at it. And it's just, as Brandon White says, recruiting better players, and they can't all play. Like, I've got, like, in terms of, Kennedy Urlacher jumping in the portal, I completely understand the decision. It's just the USC part of it, like, none of us want to, so another guy now we're going to see coming back to Notre Dame Stadium this year, potentially.
That's true.
Kennedy Urlacher with USC. Fill in the blank. It's blank that USC is 12-12 in its last 24 games against Power 5 teams.
It's better than I thought it was. That was my honest reaction when I read that question.
Really?
Better than I thought it was.
Better than you thought it would be?
It was, because they always start off with all this flash, and then they kind of fall off. And that's kind of how it's been the last couple of years, it feels like. It's better than I thought it was. They had all kinds of issues last year. Quarterback and, like, all kinds of stuff going on. And, I thought that they were below 500 when it came to Power 4 teams. I really did. So, better than I thought. Good for you, Trojans.
Well, remember now, they went to the Cotton Bowl in Lincoln Riley's first year, so I was kind of surprised that it's as low as what it is in the last 24 games.
Because it covers all, like, his entire tenure.
But it's also why Chad Bowden is raiding Notre Dame's roster.
Exactly.
They're making every attempt to raid Notre Dame's roster because they've got to get some talent in there. They've got to replenish it. He knows he recruited a bunch of studs to come to Notre Dame, and so now he's trying to get them all to go to Los Angeles if he can.
Look,
and I'm sure he's going to try for more as well.
I was going to say, do not be surprised over the next week, okay? Because I know the portal closes on Friday. There's some time where they can still kind of jump in. over the weekend. So in a week, you're going to see more guys jump in the portal from Notre Dame. That's going to happen. So people brace yourselves, right? And don't be surprised if some of those guys end up at USC.
We only have 4 days left of the portal being open.
Correct. But don't be surprised. You're going to see a lot of Hayes Fawcett, things that say Notre Dame to USC, and it's going to have a little arrow. Like
I won't be surprised.
That's going to happen. So everybody just needs to be ready for that. That's what I'll say. Just be ready.
Good point. Good point. Prepping them, Vince, getting them ready.
I'm trying, because life is stressful out there. Just it's okay.
We didn't get to talk much about the offensive line last week because of all the portal news. Sullivan Absher played center during the blue gold game, and Marcus Freeman discussed him a little bit afterwards, doing some cross training at Garden Center.
You're going to have to have a couple of those guys that can go in at any position. And Sully's a guy that's played tackle for us, guard and center. And that's the more value you have, the more opportunity you're going to have to play. And that's what we've been trying to do with Sully and some other guys. Just say, hey, is he the next best guy, right? And if you are, it doesn't matter if you're practicing a center, guard, or tackle, you're going to be the guy that goes in. And so he's done a wonderful job at all three positions. We got to continue to get reps at snapping the ball. That's the one thing that we got to, with all of our new snappers, continue to get valuable reps doing that. But I'm really pleased with Sullivan Absher.
All right, Vince, so what do you think about Mr. Absher doing a little cross-training?
I think going into this season, we all kind of thought that Sullivan Absher was going to be in the conversation for one of the starting jobs or in competition to compete for one of those starting jobs. And so that means he's one of the 6 or 7 best offensive linemen at Notre Dame right now. And I think that is basically what he's saying. And if he doesn't end up starting, he's going to be one of those super subs, right? They'll probably have one guy that can do either tackle position. They'll probably have one guy that can do center guard position. You know what I mean? And it sounds like he's going to be that interior guy. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he is one of the 7 best, and he's practicing like that. And they're preparing him like that, which I like.
And he really kind of a guy who sort of came on because we were seeing Otting playing more center in some of the early opportunities we got to get out there at spring. But it was Absher who was with the first team offensive line. And obviously Ashton Craig being injured, so he's out. So that'll be a factor. And kind of curious to see if it, turns into a little bit of a battle during fall training camp, potentially, because as we have seen the last 2 training camps with Joe Rudolph out there, all bets are off, really. Like anything can happen. And it sounds like Absher has put himself in the mix. He's a guy who played in every game, last year, a lot of special teams type stuff and, reserve stuff as well. But I agree with what you're saying. He's definitely one of the top 7 guys. And it seems like he's kind of pushing now to get himself, closer to really being in the mix. So good for him. Scale of 1 to 10, because there were some concerns coming out of the spring about the offensive line. What is your concern for Notre Dame's offensive line?
I think the offensive line is going to be very good this year. I think they're Joe Moore Award finalist type potential there. I'm sure that when it's all said and done, I'll still have issues with maybe some of the placement of the offensive linemen, right? But not necessarily who they are. Like, does that make sense? Like, I think there's a lot of talent here. I think Anthony Knapp could be very, very good on this line. He could be. There's always a usually pretty big jump from freshman to sophomore year. I think he's going to see that jump too, as long as he can get back and be, healthy and all of those things, which it appears he is. I think Lambert going down is a blow, no doubt about it. That hurts the competition level of this line. Like, if he was still healthy, I would feel even better about it, being where I think they need to be. But they've still got the bodies to do it, and I think they're going to be a really, really good offensive line. I do as well. So my concern level is very low. It's like a 2. I think you make a. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't answer the question.
The way you differentiated it is probably right. Like you might nitpick with who's playing where, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be fine. Josh says he's not sold on Knapp at left tackle. I mean,
Me
you're
neither.
not alone. There are
I'm
a lot of people
I'm not sold
there.
on that either, but
Yeah.
he's going to have a really good player right next to him too.
But like with the emergence of Absher, here's the question, like, does Absher make a bid maybe for that right guard spot, and does Jagasaw maybe go back out to left tackle?
Definitely possible.
Like, that could be a thing if Absher is good enough, and because I think that was Jagasaw strictly playing guard this spring? What was that? Was that more an experiment that no one wanted to call it an experiment? Because like Joe Rudolph, when we talked to him, it's like, man, when you watched him in that Penn State game and you saw how good he could be at right guard, it's like maybe we should explore that a little bit more. So they did explore that a little bit more. But does he become a better option at left tackle if your goal is to get the top 5 guys out there? If Absher shows that he can be, that kind of guy at right guard, I think that, those are the kind of things that maybe, continue to be tinkered with over the course of the summer and into fall training camp. Because again, we've seen some curveballs come about in training camp with that offensive line in terms of who's playing where in each of the last 2 years. And there was, Andrew said that Rudolph did a good job of cross-training Pat Coogan. I would agree with that.
Sure.
He was obviously able to step in and play. But then Michael said, is Craig even going to be ready for Miami? Absher might have to start. I mean, that's a legit possibility because, I mean, it was an ACL that Ashton Craig had. So, like, some of these other guys, we're not going to know. Like, the one, I guess I won't say it's a good thing, but the one thing about it being an offensive lineman is you don't have to worry about, it's not like a running back or a wide receiver or a linebacker. You don't have to worry about a lot of agilities, right? They're going to wear the knee braces and keep their knees, immobilized as much as possible. And so but that will be, maybe that's something, we're going to get to talk to Marcus Freeman on Wednesday. So I'll log that, maybe kind of ask him, what Ashton Craig's progress is at this point, if I get a chance.
It's a good one.
Good question, Michael.
I think that, like I said, there's a lot of talent there. I would love to see just Anthony Knapp practice at guard, see what he can do on the inside. Mm-hmm. I would like to see that. I mean, we are all speculating that, he sucks at left tackle. He's obviously a guard. Well, I'd like to see him at guard. I'd like to see him, run through his paces at guard to see if he is actually good at guard. And I'm not saying he's not going to be good at left tackle. I personally think he'd be better on the inside, but I'd like to see it there first. You know what I mean? And obviously, look, they went to the national championship game with him at left tackle. And I realized Riley Leonard was super athletic and all of those things. A lot of stuff going around the internet right now, a lot of videos and stuff. Go back and watch that Jeremiah Love 98-yard run against IU. Anthony Knapp took care of business on that play. You know what I mean? So, we're not talking about the difference between, Anthony Knapp starting and me. You know what I mean? He's still a very good offensive lineman. I just think he's a little out of position. But you know what? There could be a lot of growth between his true freshman year and his true sophomore year. And I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what happens.
I think the biggest thing with him is just being stronger.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's the biggest thing. There are times that he could probably move his feet a little bit better. But, again, how much of that comes with, you're out there as a true freshman and there are, still some things as a left tackle that you have to be wary of, like stunts and loops and, all those different kind of things and just getting used to that and, and getting those reps and having that experience, I think that comes with it. Couple things going back to the last question. The USC stuff. Christopher wants to know, would you call that lazy recruiting by Chad Bowden? Poaching basically all these Notre Dame players.
I actually would not call that lazy recruiting. He built up those relationships.
He put in the work.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's his work that he put in. So I actually have no problem with it. As long as he's not tampering and trying to get them to jump into the portal, that kind of thing like that. That's where it gets shady. But if they're going to jump into the portal, I would absolutely give them a call and be like, hey, man, remember that relationship we had? We can do that over here too on the West Coast. And, there's beaches out here, like I would absolutely tap into those relationships. It is not about what it's about who you know. And you're going to go and you're going to see, like somebody said that Steve Angeli, not to bring him up again, but Steve Angeli is going out to Syracuse because his former high school offensive coordinator's on the staff. It's about relationships,
There
man.
you go.
You're going to go where you're comfortable.
Yep.
So,
and Outbound was, I would just put that up as you were saying that. He's wondering where Angeli may end up. And that's kind of the news of the day with Steve Angeli is making a visit to Syracuse. So we'll find out. That puts you and I, Vince, one step closer to getting some free food from Jesse. If that pans out.
I may or may not have had that conversation with my wife before the show. I was like, things are looking pretty good. So start studying the menu. All right.
That's right. Where are we going? Jesse was counting on his wings. I don't know if that's
really
was.
He was adamant too. Like I believe I was reading you correctly. Like you and I did not jump into that bet. Like with both feet. We were trying to like slow play him a little bit, but he was like adamant about it.
We tried to let him reconsider, and he came all guns blazing.
He really
on
did.
That. You really want in on this?
Okay.
Really?
Here we go.
So TD4ND asking over under 8 wins for LSU. So I just pulled up their schedule.
Okay. I appreciate that because I definitely do not have it.
At Clemson to start things off, then Louisiana Tech, then they host Florida, then Southeastern Louisiana, then at Ole Miss, South Carolina, at Vandy, Texas A&M, at Alabama, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, at Oklahoma. So we'll go 3 right off the bat with the 3 FCS schools that they're playing.
3 of them. That's crazy.
Yes.
Wow.
I would bet that their over under is 8.5. Let me go to FanDuel here real quick.
I think 9 is a safe bet. I think 9's a safe number. I do. Yeah.
It's not a brutal schedule by any means.
No, it's not. And you got enough toss-up games in there. I mean, obviously that Clemson LSU game is going to be a big one, in that week 0 slot. Florida LSU, is that going to be a big game? What's Florida going to look like? LSU should win that game.
Their Vegas over under is 8.5.
Look at you. I'm going to say over. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They are supposed to be better this year than they have been. And, is Ole Miss going to come back to the pack? I don't know. We think Texas A&M is going to be better. What is Alabama going to be? I think I'll say they win 9 games. So I'll take the over.
I think so as well. But 9 games ain't going to cut it.
No, not at all.
He is.
If he only hits 9, he's
shown that he can win 9 games down there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when Notre Dame is winning double-digit games with a first-time starting quarterback this year. Yep. Beefeater says, having lived in both, I can tell Angeli Syracuse is South Bend with hills. I mean,
I don't know if that's definitely not a compliment.
I guess I haven't been outside of Syracuse. I know there are hills outside of town. I know there's even more snow in Syracuse than there is in South Bend.
There's a reason they play in a dome for football.
That. Yeah. Yeah, it, as Michael says, twice the amount of snow. That's exactly right. Have you ever seen some of those photos from that part of New York
really.
Where it's literally, like the snow is like they've plowed a road and a car's driving down it and the snow is literally like
just
10 or 15 feet high. Yeah, it's like a wall on both sides.
Lord.
Yeah.
Good Lord. I mean, they look, LSU should be, I think they're going to be decent this year. They're going to be in the conversation 2/3 of the way through the season. They will still be in the playoff conversation. You know what I mean? It just depends on what Kelly does with that information. Yeah. I would bet you that they will go into the Alabama game at Alabama on November 8th in contention for the playoff. If they win that game, they're still in contention. And if they lose that game, they're out. That's how I see this
I
playing.
mean, they should be competitive in every game.
Absolutely, they
play, and not necessarily be favored in every game that they play. But like, I think LSU has every reason to believe that
Sure
they can beat Alabama this year.
They
There's really
should.
no team on their schedule that they shouldn't expect that they can win. That
Right.
doesn't mean they're going to win them all, but
who knew that they would?
It's a very winnable schedule.
Who knew that the 3-game gauntlet for LSU would be Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Alabama?
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh man.
Fill in the blank. Justin Fields just signed with the New York Jets this offseason, your former Chicago Bears quarterback. He was recently asked about the prospect of the Jets drafting another quarterback this week and how he would react to that. He said he's not interested in rhetorical questions. And that answer, Vince, is blank.
Oh, man. I've been trying to come up with a good answer for this one. Because that answer is basically, he's confident in what he's doing, right? He's a confident dude, and you should be if you're a quarterback. I guess he didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, like that they're going to draft his replacement or whatever. But dude, you signed with the Jets. Like that's about it's dysfunctional. Like, what do you think is going to happen? They're probably going to draft a quarterback, and they don't even know who they're going to start. You know what I mean? Like, it's just dysfunctional on their side, on that side of their helmets.
First, I do think he meant hypothetical and not rhetorical, but we all get the gist of what he was saying. So I'm not nitpicking. I'm just saying I think that's what he actually meant was hypothetical. But at the same time, like, I agree. I think it's actually the perfect answer, because what is Justin Fields supposed to say to that? It's completely out of his control.
Correct.
It's not like he has any control over who the Jets are going to, any team that he plays for are going to go out and draft. And he's on his third team now, and he's been around for 6-7 years now at this point already. You've got to expect that they're going to be drafting a quarterback at some point, but it's completely out of his control, just like any other position that they draft. He doesn't control that. So what energy should he be, using up worrying about if the Jets are going to draft another quarterback or not? So I thought it was actually a very good response on Justin Fields' part.
You know who he is? He's Brian Drew.
Brian Drew.
The incumbent starting quarterback for the Browns in draft day. Who's sitting there watching the draft, and
right.
when they don't draft the quarterback, he's celebrating, you know what I mean? Because he gets to still be the quarterback.
That's right.
Fun fact that I didn't realize until just now when I looked, because I couldn't remember his name either. I didn't realize that the actor who played Brian Drew was also the actor who played Clark Kent in Smallville.
Really?
I had no idea. Didn't look like him at all, because he had his head shaved
and
everything else. He didn't have the locks that he had when he was on that show. And I was going to
say, I remembered a bald guy,
a little older
from draft day.
Yes, he was bald for sure. He shaved it. I had no idea. There you go. That's your small fact of the day.
Dude from Smallville.
All
right. NBA analyst Richard Jefferson went through referee school to get a better feel for what their job is like. Vince, do you buy or sell that all game analysts should be required to do something similar?
I buy that with the biggest buy of the night. Like, this is huge. I think this is so smart. I think it is incredibly intelligent to do this, because now you can try to put yourself in the shoes of a referee, but with knowledge, like with actual knowledge, because you went through it. Like, and I will go further and say, because I saw this firsthand, right? So my son played soccer. And when he got old enough, when you're like 14, you can go through and you can become a referee, and you go through the classes and everything. And then you can go ref like little soccer and make some money, right? That's technically like his first job, right? It made him a better player because he knew what refs were looking for, because he went through all the training to become a referee.
Interesting.
And he also learned how to speak to referees. So, and like get on their level and speak to them about what they're seeing and what they're not seeing, and things like that.
Not even analysts, players should go do it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely intelligent. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm not as heavy into the buy as you, but at the same time, I mean, I agree.
I get it.
It definitely serves its purpose, and I think that it would benefit probably all broadcasters, to do something like that. And I hadn't even thought of the like what you're talking about with players and how it could benefit them as well. But like, do referees have to go to like do they have to call a game, to understand how broadcasters feel,
I get that.
watching them?
They don't have to listen to it either, though,
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. But some of them, like you've heard about, some of these referees who get the rabbit ears and stuff like that, who do like who've actually gone at it with, broadcasters and announcers and stuff like that on the sideline. But I definitely think it would be a benefit, like if I had more time and, like if they were just going to put on some kind of clinic, I think that it would, it would definitely be interesting for me to do something like, I'm not an analyst, obviously, but I, do games. I think that there would be a lot of benefit in that, of knowing exactly, what officials are looking at, and just all the things that you're talking about there. I think that there would be some definite benefit in doing something like that. But requirement, I think that it should be at least encouraged, by the leagues to do it. But like Richard Jefferson also has the benefit of probably being able to fork out a good amount of money to, to go do something like that. If employers like the broadcast companies actually wanted to pay for it, I think I'd definitely jump in on something.
If I was a pro, like a professional play-by-play, and that's all I did, like that was it. You know what I mean? I would consider it. Maybe do some online courses or something along those lines. I would absolutely consider it, just to put myself in different shoes. That kind of a deal. I would also probably do some coaching as well. You know what I mean? And just to immerse yourself in everything that you're talking about, so that you have more of a repertoire. To talk
for sure.
About,
for sure. And just gives you more knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. You can never have too much knowledge. You gotta be a lifelong learner. Sean Stiers, lifelong learner. Straight from the Dean of Discipline.
That's all I'm saying. Be a lifelong learner.
Apparently, I've got homework to do on the Miami team too, according to our chat. So I'll go ahead and get that done.
Oh, are you not as up on Miami as you're
apparently not
right now?
Nope, apparently not. They've got the best offensive line in the country, from what I'm reading.
Oh.
So got to go do my homework, and I will do that. I love homework.
I don't know whether they're, I'm looking easy points. Miami O-line when we're freshmen, now they're juniors. I did see Cam Ward running around quite a bit, for his life last year with that same offensive line,
as did
I guess. But I mean, we'll see.
It's all good.
We'll see. They'll play the game. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate you being here as always. We're going to do a little NFL draft preview on tomorrow's show. Our old friend Ryan Roberts is going to pop in, and we'll talk a little Notre Dame draft. We'll talk some of the, like top of the draft, what's going to happen up at the top of the draft in the first round and all that kind of good stuff. And then Jesse's going to be in for rapid fire as well. Hit that like button before you head out, and we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.